Hi, I'm Charles Moman. I'm a retired elementary music teacher, and I'm very fortunate and blessed to have traveled to Auschwitz twice with Eva, and then this past fall with a smaller group to Romania to visit her home village and other places related to her life before and after Auschwitz. I've been wanting to do this video for quite a while. I'm a pretty serious photographer, and there have been some other great photographers on the Auschwitz trips, and I know you can get tips from them. So in this video, I mainly want to talk about just some quick advice if you're thinking about taking a lot of extra photos at Auschwitz, because perhaps you're going to do like what I do. I now do talks all over Indiana at libraries and schools about my trips and about the Holocaust in general. So I hope you find this useful. I actually do a lot of YouTube videos, primarily about a certain kind of camper, mini camper that I use, and some of my travel trips. And in those, sometimes I use some fancy bells and whistles. I won't do this in this video. I do plan on doing a much more professional, detailed video about preparing for a trip to Auschwitz, and in particular, very detailed about filming and stills and video when you're there at Auschwitz. Like I said, I've been there twice. I plan on going hopefully back one more time for a special project I hope to work with. So it's up to you really to get ready. I can't say that I was super prepared when I went in January 2015. I of course had read Eva's book, Surviving the Angel of Death. I had seen the video, Forgiving Dr. Mengele, and I had heard her talk, of course, and so I had that. But I think it's great, the more you know about the place, the better. Some people, I think they like to go and just get it just as it is when they first walk in the door, and if that's you, that's fine. But I think it's really, you'll get, I think, the gravity, the weight of the place if you know more when you get there. But those of you that have studied the Holocaust know it seems like the more you study it, the bigger it gets, and almost like it's the less I understand. I do want to give you a couple quick tips. I'm going to have running behind me some photos, and if you go to charlesmoman.smugmug.com, you'll see hundreds, maybe thousands of my Auschwitz pictures in galleries, and so you are free to use those in your talks if you'd like. It'd be nice if you gave me credit. I'm not concerned about money. My YouTube videos are not monetized, so I'm not making any money from this. And when I do talks around the state, my honorariums go directly to candles, so I don't financially benefit from any of this. I do want to mention a couple of things. So you can go to my charlesmoman.smugmug.com if you want to get some ideas. Just look at the galleries of both my January 2015 trip for the 70th commemoration of the liberation of Auschwitz, and then I went back again in the summer of 2015, and I spent almost a month by myself filming at Auschwitz. I stayed in the village at a B&B, and I also went to the camp every day for a week, and I got to work with the museum staff, and it was great. So I got an opportunity to film at a lot of places. I got to film a little bit in their archives, and that helped me a lot. But I also went to Treblinka camp, death camp, above Warsaw, as well as in Warsaw, and another camp, Majdanek, which is in Lublin. And so those are the main places that I've been that I have filmed. I've done no filming in Germany whatsoever. I've also been to Yad Vashem. I took a class with someone from Yad Vashem at the Jewish Center in Indianapolis, and so they're in the International Studies, she and her husband, Yad Vashem. So this past March I was there and spent a day, took a day off our tour, that tour group, let my wife go with our tour group, and then I spent the day at Yad Vashem doing some filming there. It's pretty limited what you can do even with permission, but I did get to do some filming there as well. And I have a big photo exhibition that I put on with like 200 images at the Jewish Center in Indianapolis, and I hope to put that on at other places as well. If you're getting ready, like I mentioned, Eva's book, Eva's talk, the DVD about Eva, and of course now the brand new documentary about Eva, and I was thrilled that Ted Green used 4 or 5 of my photos for my trips in that video as well. I want to suggest one thing you might consider doing. You've got a couple months or so before your trip this summer. You need to do some reading, and so some of you I'm sure already have. I have found a great resource is Amazon. And by the way, if you buy through Amazon, use Amazon Smile, and your little teeny bit of money on every purchase will go to candles. So if you're not familiar with that program, look it up, Amazon Smile, and you can designate candles as your charity that you'd like it to go to. So I've been doing that for years. one speaker they had at Candles, and this is such a good book. It's called Why? Explain the Holocaust by Peter Hayes. I didn't get to go see him, but I got this book before I even knew he was going to be at Candles. I highly recommend this book. I especially recommend, it's usually on Netflix, sometimes Hulu or Amazon Prime, but it's called, it's a BBC 6-part series called Auschwitz, the Nazis, and the Final Solution. Excellent resource. Back to Amazon, I bought a lot of books that I've read about or seen mentioned on Facebook and other places. I just go to Amazon, and quite often I found them used. And quite often very inexpensive. Actually, sometimes it's $1 or $2, and then the shipping costs more than the book, like $3 or $4. So it's a great resource. So a couple of the books I wanted to mention. So Peter Hayes in that first book had been at Candles, and then Eva received an honor, I believe it's in Washington, D.C., with Father Patrick Dubois, and he's with a group called Yahad and Unum. Together in One, I believe is a translation, and I've taken training with his staff, and what he's doing is going across Eastern Europe with teams and identifying, finding all the massacre sites, the Einsatzgruppen and the countries themselves did of Jews in the tens, the hundreds, and thousands, and tens of thousands, Babi Yar and some of the other huge massacres. And so what is referred to as the Holocaust by bullets. So even though this is in Auschwitz, I think it's important that you know that at the time of Auschwitz, this other Holocaust by bullets was going on. So his first book is called The Holocaust by Bullets. Highly recommend it. It's going to rock your world, because we think of Auschwitz and gas chambers, but there was a lot more going on. And then his second book is called In Broad Daylight, and it's titled The Secret Procedures Behind the Holocaust by Bullets. So they're not only identifying these sites all across the Ukraine, all across Eastern Europe, but they're interviewing thousands of people who are now, of course, in their 80s and 90s, that were children or teenagers that were there and witnessed the massacres, saw the Jews, their friends, being taken in the villages, sometimes right there in plain sight in the village, usually off to the edge in the woods, and quite often they could watch. They actually sat and watched the massacres going on. And in some cases, their parents or relatives were forced to dig the ditches, the pits, and some of these people have never spoken out about it for years. So anyway, so that's just with preparation. And then I can't really copy this for you and send it to you, but if you can somehow find information like this is the guidebook that you can get at Auschwitz, and I would buy it as soon as I get there. But on the inside cover, it's got a diagram of Auschwitz I, and then it also has a diagram of Auschwitz II. So you can kind of get the layout. And if you search on the internet, I'm sure you can find diagrams like this. And I would print them up and just sort of familiarize how the camps are laid out. Before I get to the gear, just a few tips about filming. If you're thinking about doing talks, one thing you want to do is film a lot. And so you don't want just a picture of a building. You want from different angles, up, high, low, this angle, against a wall, filming. Get close-ups. I really highly suggest getting close-ups of doors and handles and windows, and just things what you can do is in your talk, your photos can be dissolving from one to the other, showing a different view, a different angle of the same building. I think you'll find that it'll make it much more interesting. And if you sort of have a plan, you know what the layout is of the two camps, it can kind of help you organize as you film. Speaking logistically, you're going to be in a big group, and you need to hear every word of the wonderful guides there. So you're going to have your headphones on, you have your earpiece in. By the way, I didn't use theirs. I brought an Apple one that I used with my iPhone, and I had one in my ear, and then I could hear around me as well. And to me, the quality was better. It's up to you, but I found that using my own plugged into the little box that you're hearing Eva and the guides, you can hear better. But maybe that's not true for everyone, but it sure worked for me. A lot of people are taking photos, so I just say, get your photo, get out of the way. And a couple other tips, and I'll probably mention this later with the cameras. I'm trying to hurry here. Turn the beeps off. When you're taking many cameras, they beep when it's in focus, and they beep for other reasons. Please turn those off, because if you got 100 people with cameras with the beeping, it really gets annoying. And so, if at all possible, just turn every beep off that you can, and I think that'll help a lot. be careful as you're filming, because you can get distracted and you really, you know, in your photographer mode, which is what I was in, all of a sudden I don't see the group. It happened to me several times, and it didn't, once it happened once or twice, I made sure to stay with the group. And sometimes I've found that tagging at the back, I can still hear fine, but I can get quite often the pictures that I want after we passed a building and they've talked about it, okay? And so I think you may find that to be helpful. But keep them visually with you, because you can actually hear them and you won't see them. They've gone between buildings, or they've gone in a building. So it's courteous to make sure you're staying with the group. So again, get those photos, get out of the way, get off to the sides, and I think it's neat to get people in the photos. It kind of gives perspective. By the way, if you want to know my story and how I've gotten involved with Candles and Eva, on the website for Candles they have Light. It's a blog, and so I was honored to have my Eva story just put on there yesterday. So if you'd like to read some of my background. And so, by the way, if you do end up doing talks and you need some tips, some helps with presentation, I've used PowerPoint, and I use the Apple version of that. But if you ever need any help with that, just contact me, and I would always be glad to help you. Let's see. So we're talking about filming, and so you're outside most of the time, a lot of the time, but then you do go into the buildings and the blocks, and you can't get in everyone because you won't have time. You just will not have time. On your free time, there are some that you may want to check out, and that's why it's good to look at the list and see what's at each place. Another great resource is called, of course, the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. has a great website. Yad Vashem has a great website, and so they have information about Auschwitz, of course, and they'll have they walk you through it. So the Auschwitz itself has an excellent website. So go there, and you can take some virtual tours of Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II, and it will give you some great ideas for photography as well. So when you're filming in the buildings, sometimes there are display cases. Most of the time you can take pictures everywhere. There are a few places, Block 9, kind of the prison within the prison of Auschwitz. Once you go in there, there's a sign, please no photography from this point on. There honestly isn't a lot there. There's some torture chambers and deprivation, some other things, and basically they're benign rooms, but I think they're asking you not to out of respect. Did I see people taking pictures? Yes, I did. In our own group, I'm not sure, but I know I saw people still taking pictures anyway. So of course I know you'll be respectful about that. At the gas chamber in Auschwitz I, when we were there in January, they had just changed the rules, and they allowed you to take pictures inside there. They changed the rules a week or two before. I still didn't want to take pictures, but our guide knew that I was doing a lot of photography, and she knew what I was doing it for. So she encouraged me to go ahead and just to take a few quick pictures, which I did. Otherwise I just simply was uncomfortable doing that in there. Back to filming, in some of the rooms there are glass. They're just basically display cases where the suitcases are and things like that. The room with mountains of hair, that's a place where they ask you specifically, do not take pictures, and don't do it. They say no, don't do it. Honor that. Is there a guard watching you? Not necessarily, but I'm sure you'll be respectful. And just being respectful around the place. I didn't see a lot of it, but you did see kind of some younger people, doing selfies with "the work makes you free" and smiling. I have very few pictures of me at Auschwitz. I just wasn't comfortable with me having my photo taken there. You'll have a group shot at Auschwitz II at Birkenau in the back, in the plaza, you might say, where the memorials are in between the crematorium sites, but I just tended not to do that so much. And you'll find that some people, if they see your camera, some groups of people do not like it. You can just see it. So of course you'll be respectful. If you can see they do not want you to take their picture, do not do it. Even though they may be interesting looking people from another country or they're dressed a different way, we do need to be respectful about that, and I'm sure you will be. When you're filming in those glass display cases, the camera filming you right now is a more professional. It's a Nikon D750. It's a big chunk, and I've got a motor drive on it. And it's a great camera, but most of you are probably not going to use that. This is my wife's. This is a Nikon D5300. This is actually what I took in January and in June of my trip. I didn't have this big camera, but it does a great job, and they're not very expensive. I got it with the kit lens, has an 18 to 55, and it actually did a great job. You don't need huge numbers of megapixels. Don't worry about all that. So I'm partial toward Nikon. Canon makes the same thing. But what you need to do is find on here, and I'm not going to show you on the Nikon because I don't know which camera you've got, but get your booklet out if you're going to get a new one. Get a kit lens, and I found I buy a lot of stuff refurbished directly from Nikon. Go to their website and you can find refurbished and save a good chunk of money. It has the same warranty as new. So I would suggest something like the 5300, and if you want to spend more, go. I like full frame, which is my 750, but this does great. But you can look on the dial and you'll find a place where you can turn the flash off. Okay, so learn how to do that, because if you're taking a picture and it's a glass, you're just going to get this big flash back at you. I used to have an educational film strip company, and I still use flash sometimes with glass cases, but the whole trick is, say this is it, you go at an angle. And if you go an angle and take it through the glass at an angle and look at it, quite often you don't see the flash on the glass itself. It lights up what's inside. But I have found that I think the best photos are without using flash. And so what I'm going to strongly urge you to do is to learn how to turn your film speed up. Of course, it's not film anymore, but you're turning your ISO up. And so don't be afraid to just crank that up to 1,000, 2,000, or even higher if you need to. Here's the trick. Make sure you remember to turn it back to 400, 800 when you get back outside. Okay? And on a lot of these, they have auto ISO, so you don't even have to worry about it. You know, you'll get in there and it will ramp up the ISO to get the picture that you need. The only problem is you may not get a super fast shutter speed. So kind of make a tripod out of yourself. You can't have a tripod or a monopod at Auschwitz. You can understand with all the people there, it's just impractical. And so what I would do quite often is I lean against a wall. When I'm at a glass case, I tend to put, I have my hand touching the glass case, and my lens might even be touching the glass or just near it. And if I do that, I can get away with a slower shutter speed as I'm taking my picture, shooting through that glass. So learn to be able to turn that ISO up high, but outside, remember, you got to remember all the time to turn it back to 400 or 800 unless you use auto ISO. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but if you get on YouTube, you'll find great tutorials about the basic use of your camera, whatever model it might be. And so I have found that the auto mode most of the time works. I use what's called program mode, and this has program as well. I've just found it works a little bit better, and it tends not to want to kick the flash on. I don't use any of the special effect things. And of course I'm using, it's in autofocus. Something, I'm not going to push this because I don't want to confuse you if you're new to cameras, but if you are somewhat familiar or you just really want to learn, you got 2 months now, learn to use manual. I don't use manual very often, but there are situations where I won't even go into, but I turn it totally on manual mode so that I'm setting the shutter speed and I'm setting the aperture. So I might want it, I'm in a place that's really dim, and I will turn, that way I can control how wide open the lens is and the shutter speed, because I don't want to be slower. For me, I don't be slower than a 30th of a second, but I like to be at least a 60th if I can. And then just experiment with manual mode. Again, you have to remember to turn it back to auto mode when you get it back outside or you're in a situation where you don't need it. I think here's another good tip, and I'm going to try to wind this up here pretty soon. You really might consider getting a fast lens. Here's a Nikon 50mm 1.8. That's a zoom lens. This is not. And here's a similar 35mm 1.8. And if I was going to choose, I would probably get a 35 1.8. And if I remember correctly, I know I got this one, this 50 for probably refurbished for 99 bucks or less. And this was probably around the same price, maybe a little bit more. You can also find them used at Camera Shop. Roberts in Indianapolis is one that I've dealt with, and they usually have great used equipment, and they rate them correctly, excellent, good, or whatever. And you can find some great deals there. But a lot of people don't think about this. If you get a lens like this, it's not zoom, so you have to move. The lens can't zoom for you. But you can get in some great shots. This is what I used inside the blocks, because they're basically museums within those blocks. This is what I used. I took off my zoom lens, and I used a lens like this, a 50 or 35mm 1.8. 1.4 is even better, but they get pretty pricey. But 1.8, if you run that ISO up, you can shoot all day long inside and never need a flash. So I would seriously consider getting a basic, and again you can spend as much as you want, Nikon, Canon, whatever, that a DSLR, get the zoom kit lens that comes with it, and then spend 100 to 150 on a lens like this, and you'll find it'll be great for other pictures. I love these other lenses because of taking pictures of my grandchildren, which I have 12 with 2 more coming. No, 10 with 2 more coming, twins coming in July. I love it because you can, with those you can shoot and get a great blurred background, and it's with my scenic stuff that I do as well. So anyway, that's, I think, a really good idea. So as I was saying, I just noticed that my camera stopped at 10 minutes, so I'm hoping I can remember what I just recorded that I wasn't really recording. But as I was saying, the 2 lenses are just great. Either one of those, the 35mm or the 50. Again, you can get them used. I can't now remember what I said before, but you can quite often find them used at places like, well, B&H, but as also you can get them at Roberts and other places as well, or refurbished directly from Nikon, same warranty. Works out great. Phones work great too. So if you're really not worried about doing a talk, you just want to remember, maybe you'll just be as well off with a phone. Okay, you might fill up your phone, so you might check on how to offload those photos and send them to the cloud, and you probably already know about that. I'm going to give you another option, and that would be a GoPro. I use GoPros like when I was filming a documentary for a trail race, Indiana Trail 100, that I mentioned in my blog on the Candles website. I went back to that race a couple years ago and filmed a documentary, so I was using all kinds of GoPros. And so this is a pretty nice one. This is, at the time, is a GoPro Hero 6. I think I paid $3.99 for it. Guess what? They now have one called the Hero 6, and the basic one has a screen like this one and has virtually all the same features for $1.99. And so this is another option if you just want something small and light. This takes beautiful photos, great video, and if you get this one just like the one I was mentioning, that's $199, you can spend more, trust me. And so they have more fancy stabilization and stuff, but you can choose your point of view, so you can have the super wide fisheye GoPro look that you see dirt bikers use, which doesn't work so well for at Auschwitz necessarily, though you could do it to get a wide view. But Birkenau, you can't take a picture of the whole place. It's so gigantic, it's like 500 acres. But you can choose your field of view, so I usually tend to use what's called linear or narrow, and it looks more like the standard view with the standard lens. And then you can, of course, shoot video with this as well. It has beeps when it goes, taking pictures or whatever. Don't use them. Again, like I mentioned before, turn the beeps off the GoPro, and it's easy to look under preferences. Again, learn how to use this before you go. Get a nice handle like this, nothing fancy. You can get one that can extend, so you can go up higher. That's your choice, but I like this for walking around. Just hold it still. They actually have voice control. You can say, you know, turn it on. If you have voice commands on, you can say, GoPro, take a photo. GoPro, start recording. So it's either, when you say that, it's taking a photo or it starts recording video. You obviously cannot do that on your Auschwitz when you're walking around with the group. Now you could if you're by yourself on some free time that you have at Auschwitz on one of the days, but and that's great. If you're by yourself, you could go GoPro, take a photo. So you have to be doing the button all the time, okay? But that's what you're going to have to use. But I think you'll find you'll be able to, even inside, be able to get some pretty good photos with this. Obviously it doesn't have a flash, but turn the voice commands off and turn the beeps off. And so this will just stick in your pocket and works great. This particular kind has removable batteries, so definitely bring with you, and they're small. Definitely bring by, I'd say at least 2 more if I were you. So every day you go with, I'd say with this, at least 3 of these batteries, I think. You maybe would get by. I film a lot, so maybe you won't need that much. And then I would get 64 gig, the micro SD cards, what I tend to use. And I buy extras. I like, if at all possible, I am filming, and when I go back home, they're all on the cards. If you bring a laptop and save them, I suppose you could reformat them and make them fresh and start new on another day, but I like to have them safely on my computer and on a card that I save elsewhere, and I number them so I can keep track. I write down what's on each card. But don't break your heart not having an extra battery or an extra memory card or 2 with you as you travel. And those little SD cards are teeny, so have them in a case or something so you won't you could lose them easily. I mean, really easily. They're so small, so really be careful with that. So here's an option. So you got a kit lens and the kit with a Nikon or Canon, your phone, or possibly a GoPro. I've thrown a lot at you, but now you've got time to get familiar with your camera. You've got time to look at other photos on different websites to get ideas. If you have any specific questions, you can ask me, charlesemoman@gmail.com. charlesemoman@gmail.com. And you can see that email on my charlesemoman.com website, which I need to update. I've got a picture of me with the big mustache about my Auschwitz talk, promotional piece. So you're in for a trip of a lifetime, and for probably most of you it's a once in a lifetime, one time you get to go. And it's such a privilege to travel with Eva. She is a delight. She can be a stinker. She's got a wicked sense of humor, but she is great. You have a lot of access to her. You get to talk with her a lot. But you're in for a busy trip. Get well rested and enjoy Krakow. It is so gorgeous. Even though you're tired, don't stay out all night, but get out there and see it with some friends. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous town. And just have a great trip. And I'm so glad that you get to go to Auschwitz with Eva Kor.